Hey, glad to see you back at Pocket Roni. Now we're going to be multiplying polynomials. Remember we called this a trinomial because it had 1, 2, 3 terms. So what do you think this would be called? It has 2 terms. So it would be called binomial, like bicycle, 2 wheels, tricycle, 3 wheels. Alright, we're going to be looking at 20b-15. We're going to be multiplying 2 binomials. This is a binomial, 1, 2 terms. Another binomial, 2 terms. So this is a binomial multiplied to a binomial. This shows you multiplying. Be sure and watch your operation sign. Are you adding or are you multiplying? It's really important to look at that. Okay, before we go into the world of algebra with x's and whole numbers, let's go back to regular math of just multiplying 2 numbers. 23 times 12. Do you remember how you did that? You took your 2 times 3 is 6, you went straight up here, and then you went diagonally across the 2 times 2, 4. Then, when you scooted over here to your hundreds place, then you said 1 times 3 is 3, and you wrote that down in the same column as your 1 was. You scooted over 1 place. And then you said 1 times 2 is 2. And then after that, after you did your multiplication, you did your arrow up this way, and then you did that number, and then after that, you multiplied those numbers, and then went straight up. Okay? And after you did all that, now you come down here and you're adding. So after you take off your multiplication hat, you put your adding hat on. 6 plus 0 is 6, 4 plus 3 is 7, 276. Okay? Now, let's take the same principles we used over here to the world of algebra over here. Start with this number and go 2 times 5. So you're going straight up like that. 2 times 5 is 10. Now you're going to go over diagonally 2 times 3x. Okay? This is not anything different than 2 times 3x. Numbers to numbers, x's to x's. 2 times 3x is 6x. By the way, this was a positive 2 times a positive 5, which is a positive 10. Watching your signs is very important. Okay? So that plus sign is very important to have, to know that this is 6x plus 10. Okay? So we did our 2 times 5, then 2 times 3x. Okay? Now we scoot over to our x, and we multiply the x times a positive 5x, and we write it in our x column. We want to line our x's up. Whole numbers, line whole numbers up, line x's up. So if we started over here with x, we write our answer down here in the x column. Now we said x times 5, now we're ready to multiply going up. X times 3x, okay? Write it off over here to the side. What number is in front of this x? 1. Numbers to numbers, x's to x's. 1 times 3 is 3. X times x is x squared. Just as 5 times 5 means 5 squared, so does x times x means x squared. Okay? So, with that being said, x times 3x, a 1x times a 3x, oh, by the way, that was a positive. 1x times 3x is a positive 3x squared. There was not an x squared term up here. So now we're down here, just as we added with the numbers, we add now. We should have whole numbers to whole numbers. A positive 10 plus 0 is a positive 10. This was a positive 6x. Positive 6x plus 5x is a positive 11x. And then this was a 0. Added to your 3x squared is 3x squared. And that is your answer for that. When you multiply 2 binomials together, you should get a trinomial for right now. So multiplying 2 binomials, we ended up with 3 terms. We cannot simplify this any more than this. You cannot add x squares to x's or x's to whole numbers. Okay? Let's look at 20e number 9. 2x plus 2 times x minus 3. Okay? We need to watch our signs. We're going to use the same principle as multiplying with numbers. Take this, multiply to that, then take this, multiply to that, okay? So we have a negative 3 times a positive 2. Negative times a positive is a negative, okay? Negative 6. And negative 3 times a positive 2x, and negative times a positive is a negative, so that would be a negative 6x. Okay, we've done that. Now we need to scoot over to our next term. Multiply it to that, then multiply it to that. Since we're starting here, then we'll start writing our answers in the x column. A positive x times a positive 2 is a positive 2x. A positive x times a positive 2x. This is like a 1 in front of here. 1 times 2 is 2. X times x is x squared. So a positive x times a positive 2x is a positive 2x squared. We have everything lined up. Now we are adding. Okay? A negative 6 plus a 0 is still negative 6. A negative 6 and a positive 2 is a negative 4x. And a 0 plus a 2x squared is just 2x squared. And that is your answer for that. Remember, you should end up with a trinomial. You should end up with an x squared term, then an x term, then a whole number. And you cannot combine any of these together. Okay. On a side note, in the world of math, you learned how to multiply things, everything lined up, top to bottom, and then you also learned how to multiply things horizontally, vertically, then horizontally. We just did vertically multiplying two binomials. Now we're going to do it horizontally, okay? You should get the same answer as if you lined this up vertically. Okay, this is 20b number 9, but we're going to learn how to multiply the two binomials horizontally. You will do this 90% of the time in algebra. So you need to learn this more so than multiplying vertically. To multiply horizontally, we're going to use what we call the FOIL method. You will hear me say this over and over. So FOIL means first, outside, inside, last. When you have two binomials, the FOIL only works when you are multiplying two binomials. Remember, binomial means two terms. Two terms, two terms. Multiply them together. Parentheses means multiply. The way we multiply this, I'll say first, outside, inside, last. First means I multiply my first terms. This is the first term of this parentheses. This is the first term of that parentheses. I multiply my first term of each parentheses together. X times x is x squared. Okay, x times x. The next thing we do is outside. This is the outside of this parentheses. This is the outside of this parentheses. They are the furthest outside terms. Okay, so I multiply the x to the 8. X times 8 is 8x. You will see me use these lines quite often. Okay, so we did the first terms, then we multiplied the outside terms, now we multiply the inside. These are the two most inside terms. So we multiply these two together. So a positive 4x times a positive x is a positive 4x. Everything was positive. When everything is positive, I like to say we're in a positive world and everything will always be positive. The very last thing we need to multiply is the last terms. These are the last terms in both parentheses. Okay? So you multiply the positive 4 to the positive 8, and that would be a positive 32. Now you see we have x squared plus 8x plus 4x plus 32. You can combine like terms. These are both x terms, so you can combine them together. You cannot combine x squares to x's or x's to whole numbers, but you can combine x's to x's. So then you still have your x squared, a positive 8x and a positive 4x is a positive 12x, and then you still have your positive 32. And this is your trinomial you get when multiplying these two binomials together with FOIL. Okay, let's do another FOIL. going to do 20b 16, but instead of multiplying this out vertically, I'm going to multiply it out horizontally because I want you to practice at the FOIL, okay? FOIL. First, outside, inside, last. Outside. Okay. So you multiply the first terms together. These are the first terms in the parentheses. So a 4x times a 1x, a positive 4x and a positive 1x is a positive 4x squared. Then you multiply your outside terms. These are the furthest outside numbers or terms of the two parentheses. So a 4x times a negative 3. Watch your signs. A positive times a negative is a negative, and 4x times 3x will be a negative 12x. Then you do your insidemost terms. These are the insidemost, a negative times a positive. So that's going to end up being a negative. Negative 2 times a positive 1x will be a negative 2x. Then you're multiplying your last terms. A negative times a negative. What is a negative times a negative? Positive. So a negative 2 times a negative 3 is a positive 6. Okay, now we can combine our like terms of x's. We still have our 4x squared. Now we have a negative 12x in debt, 12. Now we're in debt 2 more. So we are in debt 14x, and then we still have our positive 6. I cannot add x squares to x's to whole numbers. So this is our final answer of multiplying those two binomials together. Okay, now we're going to do 20b18 as our last problem. This problem reminds you to watch your signs. Okay, we have, again, I'm going to do this problem horizontally and not vertically. You have 3x plus 7 times 4x plus 2. We're going to use FOIL first, outside, inside, last. Our first terms, 3x times 4x. Numbers to numbers, x's to x's. 3 times 4 is 12, x times x, x squared. Outside terms, this is our very most outside numbers. 3x times 2. This is a positive 3x, a positive 2, so it's a positive number. 3x times 2 would be a positive 6x. Now we want to do our inside terms. The positive 7 to a positive 4x will be a positive 28x. Now we're multiplying our last terms. A positive 7 times a positive 2 is a positive 14. Now we can combine our x terms. So we have 12x squared plus 34x plus 14. Make sure I did my math right. Okay, and that would be your answer, your trinomial, for multiplying these two binomials together.